Welcome to episode 114 of the Omnigamers Club podcast, the podcast for games on all platforms, including slot machines. I am Daniel Winter.
And I'm Mark USA. Hello.
Hello, Mark.
How's it going?
Good, yeah. So last week before school goes back, basically. So enjoying the downtime there. We've been in sort of staycation mode the last few weeks. So haven't had much routine. To be honest, I'm kind of looking forward to getting back to a little more routine in my
I
life.
definitely am. I want to send those kids back to school and out of the house. It'll be nice.
Excellent. So, today we've got some games to discuss. We'll be bringing you three courses of game discussion. Why don't we start off with the appetizer, where we talk about some game-related topics that are of interest to us. What have you got for us today, Mark?
Yeah, I don't have a lot to report, even though a lot is going on. You and I were talking before we got started, but I'm getting a little disillusioned with all like the kind of marketing forward information that's out there. I guess this was always the case with game journalism.
Always has been.
It always has been, always will be. It's just like the astronauts out looking at Earth in that meme. But basically, like Gamescom's going on. There was a bunch of announcements. I'm not interested in any of it. There's a new version of Cypher, the Cypher TTRPG. I'm kind of like a little bit, maybe curious about that. Yeah, all right, technical issues. Okay, I'll just roll back into it.
Keeley was trying to hack you to stop you from revealing the truth.
Yeah, exactly. I was trying to stop me from being a downer. But basically, I'm not jazzed about any of the new announcements going on in any of the online games marketing that's out there. One positive story that I did hear that I'd like to share is a bit of an anecdote. I don't know the source. I just read it. Maybe it was in social media. This might be secondhand. Maybe this is totally made up. But I'd like to believe it's true. When asked about the topic of Hollow Knight, Silksong, obviously we got an announcement for a date for the long-awaited sequel to come out. I'm actually not that jazzed about it. Not that I'm against it. It's just I haven't finished or even gotten that far in the original, so it doesn't personally affect me.
Well, those silk posters can stop edging themselves now.
Right, but I know that it was a bit of a meme that it's been delayed and delayed and
Mm-hmm.
delayed. And I heard this kind of delightful story that the developers came out and said why it was delayed so long, and that basically they said something to the effect of, well, the first game was a hit, sold a bunch of copies, and the devs wanted to kind of reward themselves, so they took a bunch of time off. That's why it took so long.
Yeah. I did see the story. I can't remember where that was. I'll dig up the link. But the story I seem to recall was not that they took time off, but they just took their time. They weren't crunching. They just worked at a solid pace. They worked at what they felt was a comfortable working condition and paid themselves a decent wage. And like, power to them. I've got absolutely no issue with that. It's a shame that the whole industry isn't like that. And I do think we need to be careful not to say, hey, this indie game's fine. It's just sell 15 million copies of your game and you'll be golden. It's a bit of a survivorship bias I've seen going on, and like this is very much an exception to the rule in terms
Right.
of how
It's not a
these are funded.
formula that can be followed, and it's not an answer to struggling devs out there. I'm just saying that in this one case, I was very pleased to hear that. Not only does it not bother me, I wish that more devs could pay themselves well, work as much as they want to, and no more, and have success in the products that they make and make the products that they want to make. I think it's a great story.
It's worth noting that Team Cherry is based in Australia, where they have A, universal healthcare, and B, lots of grants supporting the arts and games specifically. You pay people, you support them, and art gets made, funnily enough.
Yeah, and theoretically, Canada has a similar situation, universal healthcare and arts grants as well. Canada is just, don't get me started. It's lots of corruption in there and lots of ill use of some of those grants. But surely some people that need it are getting it as well. So hopefully we get some more good games out of Canada as well. So we can hope for the best. Anyways, I thought that was a nice story, so I'd like to share it.
Yeah, well, I mean, well, speaking of games coming out of Canada, we have the Vancouver Game Garden coming up again in a few weeks. We covered that last year, and it's now coming back bigger and better. 2 days at a new, bigger venue, and I'm really excited to check that out and see what the Vancouver design scene is putting out there. I've played 1,000 times Resist. I remember being featured heavily last year. I've since played that and loved it. So yeah, excited to see what Vancouver has to offer. I do seem to recall someone selling their game on Game Boy cartridges that I'm hoping is there again this year. So I'll definitely be grabbing one of those.
Make sure to bring your Game Boy Color with you so you can be
Yes.
sure it still works. Nice. Yeah, I enjoyed my time at the last Game Garden. So, yeah, just let me know and I'll definitely be there.
Excellent. Yeah, looking forward to covering that. So yeah, I haven't watched any of the Gamescom coverage myself. It is a shame that everything is so marketing heavy these days. I mean, that's always been the case. I think the difference is that all the alternatives of other sorts of coverage have dried up. Basically, marketing is all that's left. Anyway, not so much a news topic, but something that I had basically a book that I've been reading recently. I mentioned this a couple of episodes ago, I think in relation to Donkey Kong Bonanza. Is that I've been reading a book called Addiction by Design by Natasha Dow Schul. So I was put onto this by the podcast Game Studies Study Buddies, who read various sort of academic books usually in regards to game design. And this specifically is about gambling, more specifically like slot machines, video poker machines, electronic gambling devices, essentially. And I mean, which might seem a little tangential to games, but I think there are some interesting analogs to be made there. And I mean, as they regularly get brought up, everyone refers to these as games, like game machines, essentially. Mark, have you used like have you been like gone to a casino, played slot machines?
Yeah, we have some casinos in BC. I've gone to some in America. I went to Las Vegas last year. I am not a gambler. I like to think I'm not
Hmm.
addictive. I don't have an addictive personality, but obviously I smoked cigarettes for many years. Quit that a while back. No, basically, whenever I go to a casino or stay at one, I always tell myself, here's $20, go spend it, and when it's gone, then walk away. And every time I do it, I'm able to do it. It goes pretty fast, typically. But yeah, that's about it, and I feel like I get enough.
I mean, I have never really gambled myself. Don't you know? I'm not into the scratch offs or the lotto or anything like that. And I've always told myself something similar. Hey, I'm not. I have no interest in going to Vegas, but if I find myself there for whatever reason, I throw $20 in for the fun of it. Curiously, that's not necessarily the exception to the rule. And like the part of the big trend that is covered in this book is how many people these days aren't playing to win, aren't expecting to come back with a profit. They're playing to keep playing. They're playing for the sake of play itself, but also playing to get into like what is called the machine state or the machine zone. And there's some interesting analogs there to the flow state, which I was discussing regards to Donkey Kong and how that is related to video games and other forms of games more broadly. So yeah, I thought that was an interesting discussion to discuss in that like I know Balatro, for example, has been a punching bag of mine and talking about how it pulls on some of those similar levers. And I don't mean to say that therefore Balatro is a bad game. I just find it interesting to think about in terms of game design how these games are compelling in more compelling than fun in that you even when you want to stop playing you just can't stop yourself. Oh, one more turn. And hey, I've just literally today finished sinking 80 hours into Xenoblade Chronicles 3, many hours of which were just grinding, picking up little collectibles, hitting the flashing light when the cooldown gets hit, and like that's very similar compulsions, more compelling than fun. So yeah, I found this really fascinating in that these games have like slot machines have gone from a bit of a curiosity, there might be one machine in the corner of the casino to basically being most of the profit the casinos are bringing in. That the design of these machines has evolved so much in the last few decades, from the machines themselves to the programming behind them to the environment of the casino itself, and so many of these other factors have gone into this, and it's really changed the way that people are playing. And like the shift towards this type of play has created new demographics, like younger people, more women are gambling now, apparently. There was an interesting analog to people wanting to play with other people around them, but in their sort of own isolated bubble, which I can't help but be reminded of my love of playing MMOs solo, and just getting into those little compulsive habits, and sort of the reassurance of other people being around you while still being relatively safe and not like, interacting with them directly. So yeah, I don't know. It's I don't want to draw too many direct comparisons to video games. I think there are some in terms of the more exploitative natures, sort of masking the currency that you're spending, perhaps, and this trend towards like games as service, basically, creating these forever games where they just want to keep you on the treadmill indefinitely, and then gamers getting upset when the end game isn't delivering the most constant stream of hashtag content, right? So yeah, I don't know if you had any thoughts in regards to gambling in games.
I think it's definitely there. It's a sort of a spectrum. You're right. It always kind of weirds me out when they, you hear on the news there's something about the gaming industry or something like that, and they're usually talking about, legalized gambling instead of talking about actual games that, game authors create. So I always think that's a funny term, especially if you live in a, gambling permissive state or country, which I know not everyone does. Some people have to travel to get their games in or something like that.
Well, very curiously, there was a huge point talking about Australia, where I grew up, obviously, and how different the culture is over there. Because it was it was highly deregulated and decentralized in the 90s, I think it was. And so every RSL club and sort of sports club has what we call poker machines, slot machines there. And usually a lot more, like the complexity of the number of bets you can make simultaneously has escalated quite a lot. It's very much a lifestyle over there. It's not something you go as a tourist to Vegas, spend the weekend gambling, and then fly back. It's just a constant presence in Australia.
Yeah, I think every culture tries to integrate some form of gambling as much as they can, basically, to make as much revenue as you can. I mean, as I've told many people many times, I was in Japan recently, and they don't have a lot of casinos, but what they do have is pachinko and slots. That's basically on every corner, in every neighborhood, at every major station, loud and blaring, and there are addicts to services like that, so we can't pretend like those don't exist. And nowadays, closer to where we are now, in Canada and the United States, you have the existence of fantasy sports, which is essentially gambling in all intents and purposes. So, like casinos kind of seem quaint in comparison to having that addictive bet always in your pocket, ready to go. But these are obviously deeper topics that we're not experts in, so I'll leave it to the experts to talk about. But I did want to bring it back to games that the types we enjoy more closely. I know that for you and I, we have a little bit of a divide on where we sit in terms of some games. Balatro is one, Satisfactory is another. You and I are always like tentative, sitting on one side of a fence or the other about it. But I want to ask you about some games that do integrate that concept of flow, but don't on the surface have a gambling or an obsessive quality to them. Games like Tetris or Lumines is another one that I played.
Score, basically, yeah.
But do people really play Tetris for a score? I mean, surely some do.
Some do.
I never did.
That's not compelling to me, but I can see that being a thing. Like whether you're spending money on it or not, like just one more round, especially with games with shorter rounds. That's. I mean, the whole definition of flow state was basically these short bursts of activity that flow seamlessly into the next, like removing friction for off ramps, basically.
There's a reason why the term Tetris effect exists. That term existed before the video game Tetris effect It's talking about an actual psychological phenomenon called the Tetris effect that people show of sort of like daydreaming or just visualizing blocks moving after you've played Tetris for a significant or even a small amount of time. That's existed since Tetris has existed.
Oh, I had a really intense fever dream after I spent all night playing GoldenEye multiplayer at Scouts, and I was literally waking dreams, and I was hallucinating
Right.
GoldenEye levels.
Another tangential relation, a game in a different genre is Sid Meier's Civilization.
That's
That's the
the
classic
quintessential one more turn.
example.
Yeah,
Exactly. Now that has no sort of booster packs or virtual currency or anything on the outset that looks like gambling, but the flow state clearly exists. So, what do you think about that in terms of addiction by design?
yeah. Who amongst us hasn't stayed up till 2 a.m. because one more turn, one more turn, and like again, I even if I think there are other ways of being exploitative and extractive, other than just money. Time is obviously very valuable currency, and I mean, obviously, people broadly, theoretically, are having fun while playing these games. Oftentimes, it is more of a compulsion than having fun, though. And as like there were some anecdotes in this book, obviously very extreme, of people who literally, urinating themselves or just having heart attacks and like just refusing to get up and treat and deal with their needs because they're so in tune with this flow state and they
Yeah.
can't stop.
We've all heard the horror stories of, I don't know, some parents being arrested because they abandoned their child while they were playing online games or something like that. There's always some sort of urban myth about that coming out of China or Japan. That always comes out. I'll mention one more example, and you don't have to give your opinion about this, but I've mentioned in the past, and I think it is actually dangerous, is a little game called, it's from, what is their name again? Their Vancouver studio, Clay. It's that game, another Oxygen Not Included.
Yes.
That game is so compelling, and it doesn't have anything to do with gambling on the outset, but I found it so compelling. Just, I've called it basically human ant farm. You just manage your little colonists out in space, and I found it so compelling because it's real time that I just couldn't make myself detached from it. So I just had to ultimately delete it from my system in the end. And but it's really fun. So what can I say? There's games that just have that quality to them.
Yeah, and the through line I think here is escapism is a word that came up, and people who want to be completely absorbed in this game, whether it's a slot machine or in their favorite MMO, and just escapism can be great, like that sense of immersion that you can get from a great game. It was an interesting point that she made that flow states can be positive and additive in like music and dance, in that they're creating a new sense of reality, or they can be depletive in that they're removing all sense of reality. And there's this real like sort of obliteration of the self, death drive, if you want to get really grim about it. And not to say that, oxygen not included is, representative of the death drive, but it does. I mean, we've all seen, people complaining about their escapism because there's too much politics in the game. They just want a completely frictionless state where they don't have to think and be confronted or conflicted about anything.
Yeah, friction is another topic. I think it's at a plane with flow. Like some people can only get into something because it has a degree of friction. So we should cover that as another side topic in another episode because it's a worthy topic of its
I've
own.
definitely started to come around on friction in games a little bit, I will say.
Yeah, because if there isn't friction, like is it a game? I don't know. I'm asking these questions.
Otherwise,
but
there's something to do while you're killing time and listening to podcasts.
yeah, there's no simple answers. All right, I think we should move into our main topic, or this will take over.
Yes, let's
It'll
do
compel
that.
us to keep on the flow of it. Did you want to
so
cover your topic?
Yeah, I'll just say if you're interested in that, check out the episode from the Game Study Buddies. They give a good summary of it. It was quite a thick book. Like it is a thick academic tome, but I was able to track it down from the library, and it was quite readable despite its length. So I recommend taking a look.
Very nice.
So, jumping on to our main course, we're each going to have a game to review. And talking about addictive game loops, I'm going to talk about a game that I've been playing on and off for the last few months and finally wanted to cement my thoughts on it. That is Returnal. So this is developed by Housemarque, published by Sony Interactive, directed by Harry Kruger. It was originally a PlayStation exclusive in April 2021, but it was recently, or in 2023, was released on Windows platform. So I've been playing it on Steam. That was one of the few games that I was happy tempted in picking up a PS5, which I still have not gotten around to. So Mark, do you know anything about Returnal?
I don't know much about it. I haven't played it myself, not having a PS5, and I don't buy a lot of new-ish games these days. It's a pretty rare case when I do, but I have played some of Housemarque's other games in the past. Resogun is one of them.
Which was like one of the first PS Plus games I seem to recall. That's the only one of those I've played. I think Stardust series is another one that they're well known for.
I played one of those Stardust games on the Vita, I believe, and there's a couple of other... I forgot what they're called. Are they something Nation? Is Alien...
Alienation.
Yeah, is one of them, and then there was another Nation game, which I didn't play, but I thought Resogun was pretty cool, like, kind of compelling in the way that some action-based games like... I think it reminded me a little bit of Choplifter. Do you remember Choplifter back in the day? It's basically a game where you went out into enemy territory in a helicopter, and you had to like land in POW camps and rescue the POWs while the guards were shooting at you. So it was a lot of like kind of risk reward, because like you can go into making a landing hot, but if you went in too hot, like you could crash your chopper, you could squish a POW, and then there's always a question of how long do you stay, how long do you leave? Just a lot of like levers that are pulling and
Sounds like
pushing
a
and pulling
simulation level.
But it was all action, and like there was no like words or dials or menus. It was all just like real time, but it just felt very kind of immersive. And I think Resogun had that quality to it. You had to like rescue little guys.
I don't recall much of it. Yeah, I do recall most of their games seeming to be largely arcadey shmups, shoot 'em ups of like various, like whether it was a top down or side to side. Most of them have been those sort of arcadey high score sort of shooters.
Yeah, but with really like compelling gameplay and mechanisms to them. I think Housemarque is generally like really highly regarded.
Yeah, well, in this game is definitely on a whole other level compared to those previous. Like those would have been considered sort of indie, smaller games, and this is not necessarily a AAA game, but like a fully fledged third-person shooter with a story and like much more of a fully fleshed out game. So, I mean, I will say up front, if you're the sort of person who watched Alien Prometheus and got really upset about everyone touching the black goo, this is not a game for you, because there's a lot of goo to touch in this game. So the overall structure is actually a roguelite. Or I will say roguelike, because there's actually not much sense of leveling up in between runs. Very little carries over between runs, other than some sort of Metroidvania style upgrades that I'll get to. But basically, you're playing a character called Celine, an astronaut in sort of sci-fi spaceship. Here's a signal on her ship that she's following, crash lands on this planet and is investigating. Very quickly starts running into her own body lying on this planet, and you play through these sort of roguelike scenarios. If you die, you basically respawn from the start. So it's playing with the roguelike sort of themes as part of the story, a sort of time loop. What was the Tom Cruise live, die, repeat sort of thing? But like her body is also
it's
there.
It's actually called Edge of Tomorrow. Live, die, repeat was actually the poster tagline.
Didn't they change the title of it though?
They changed the title after the fact that nobody could remember the actual title of the movie, and the comic, the Japanese comic which it's based on, is actually called All You Need Is Kill.
Yes, okay, that's right.
I believe.
Yeah,
and it's actually really compelling and is a little bit deeper than the film, but still not that long. I think it's only in 2 volumes, so anyone who wants to should read it.
Okay, so not like that then. But it is basically a time loop game where they're playing with that as part of the narrative. So yeah, each run is actually quite long, which I think is my probably my biggest gripe with this game is like one long run of completion might be 3 or 4 hours. You're playing through multiple biomes. Each biome is quite long, and to get to the end, like when the game launched, there was no save points. You could not save and exit and re-enter back in, which was a very much obviously a deliberate design decision. But like consoles auto updating when someone paused their game, there were various cases in which that was causing a lot of unnecessary friction, shall we say. They have now added the save feature, though it's not always consistent as to when I can save. I don't know, but basically, yeah, third person roguelike game. So I have a lot of complaints about this game that I could go into. Like I said, the length of each run, the map being really hard to navigate, some of the items being quite uninteresting, but really all of that sort of falls away when the combat is just so good. It's one of the best combat systems I've played in one of these games in a long time, and that probably is like key to their previous experience with like shmups and these really tight action games. This obviously is third person, which is like unusual for them, but you can still feel that legacy of their previous games. When it's actually one of the comparisons is like Near Automata, where all these enemies are like shooting out orbs at you constantly. Like all of the attacks from enemies are basically projectiles and different patterns of these orbs shooting out that you've got to like jump over or dash through and navigate. You have a lot of mobility options. The other comparison for me was Warframe. I don't know if you ever played that.
No, I haven't. I think I've probably played like 15 minutes of Warframe. Okay. I've heard some positive things lately, though, so I'm kind of intending to check it out.
Yeah, I've been meaning to go back myself. I played it like close to launch, but it was like it described as sort of space ninjas, a lot of high mobility third person. So here you have a jump that's quite flexible, you have a dash, you have like a grappling hook is one of the first upgrades you get, which lets you zip around the combat arenas. So quite a lot of options there, and you do want to be on the move constantly, both avoiding those projectiles, but also when enemies die, they drop a currency that you have like disappears within a few seconds. So you have to like go and collect that really quickly. So you're constantly on the move. This feels great, high momentum, action game that it is sometimes a little bit hard. You don't have a great sense of sort of awareness, especially like behind you and where all these projectiles are. But when you're in the zone, it does feel really compelling and fun to just dashing around shooting things. The guns are all quite varied. You gradually unlock different weapon types. I think by the end there's at least a dozen that all play quite differently. Like you start out with a pistol, but then you get like shotguns, there's a few assault rifles, there's a few sort of grenade launchers that can do damage over time. There's like this weird pylon thing. It basically shoots out these pylons, and when you shoot two of them out, there'll be like an electrical field between them that can like do an area of effect attack. And then all of those weapons can like spawn in with various sort of tweaks to them. Like this one will have homing bullets, or this one will shoot slower but more powerful. There's like a lot of different sort of potential tweaks that each gun can have. Alt fire modes that will be on a cooldown. So there's a huge amount of variety, just the moment to moment how you're interacting with this game. You'll have there's the consumables that you can pick up. So yeah, very high interaction in how you're navigating this roguelite. There's what was the other thing? The active reload is when you're waiting for the gun to reload, you can reload faster if you sort of hit the button at the right time, and that's different for each gun. Some have very permissive active reload, some have this really fast tiny window, so you've really got to nail that to keep that flow of momentum going. So yeah, that's the main takeaway here, is like this that core combat loop is really fun, and there's a couple of positive feedback loops that feed into that. Like you basically have a kill streak, and every 5 enemies you get this level up, which might say I think the first one is like gives you a radar that highlights particular features. One will just give you like a shield. So the higher your kill streak, the more powerful you are, essentially. And the other one with you, when you pick up health upgrades, if your health is already full, it goes into this little meter that will increase your maximum health. So if you're playing really well, you'll continue to get more powerful, essentially, is the loop of this game. So it is an incredibly difficult game, but once you start learning the mechanics, learning the patterns of these enemies, it does create a sort of natural ramp of the better you are, the more powerful you are, the faster you'll get through this. So that it obviously feels bad when you lose one of those kill streaks, but it does create this creates a good flow state, I will say, in once you get into the zone and you're starting to memorize and get on board with all these different patterns. And I mean, so one of my biggest struggle with this game is that my computer died while I was playing it. I got a hard crash to blue screen, which was not the game's fault, I will say, but I was a month or two without my computer and not playing the game, and when I came back, I'd like lost all of that knowledge and had to start from square one. And it was remarkably different how much harder it was when you don't have that muscle memory baked in. So it is quite of a slow ramp up. And I mean, not to double back to one of my biggest complaints about this is that those runs are long, and like it's like 3 biomes for a full run, essentially. You can basically jump from one biome to the next, but you're going to be very weak when you do so, because as you kill enemies and collect upgrades, you're going to have you basically upgrade your weapon level. The weapons that you find will start being a higher level and deal more damage. So to beat the game and have a fair chance at beating the game, you have to be really thorough in how you explore these levels and like basically fully clear a biome as much as possible, which is incredibly time consuming. Each of these biomes is large. Each room is quite large. And that's one of the other things for all of the momentum in this game. You'll clear a room and then suddenly have to spend 5 minutes running around finding all the collectibles, because the layout is quite confusing. There's multiple levels to each arena, basically, of different tunnels and side passages that loop around in really confusing ways. Just looking at the surrounding, it's very dark. It's hard to tell what's what. So you spend a lot of time just staring at this tiny little mini-map in the corner and trying to look for all the symbols on that. So that does break the momentum. And sometimes you need that sort of that quiet time after the high intensity battles, but more often than not, I just wanted to keep that momentum going. And then spending 5 minutes looking for all the health collectibles in every corner of the room was a bit of a momentum killer, to be honest.
They should just have auto collect on for that sort of stuff.
Yeah, because oftentimes a lot of these will have, like, if you're looking at consumables, there might be a couple dozen different consumables, and you can't know what they are by looking at them. You've got to stop. You've got to read the description. Oh, this is the one that makes my melee attack do extra damage for 5 seconds. This is the one that destroys all turrets. So you have to stop and read text constantly, which is, again, a strange choice. I think the UI in this game is a little bit too small, and there's too much information to track broadly, because you do have a lot of tools in your belt in this game, but not particularly readable in terms of all of in just reading all those tools as they appear in the map.
Yeah, I have played some roguelites in the past. The majority of them have been, if they're not in like card form or something like that, have been in 2D action games. Rogue Legacy is one of my faves, for instance. There's other ones as well. But I haven't really played a lot of first-person roguelikes. So I wonder, probably the only one that I played even a tiny amount is, I think, Risk of Rain 2. Or maybe that's even third person. I don't remember.
This is third person as well, yeah.
Okay. So, have you played a lot of first person or third person roguelites? Like, how does it compare to the 2D ones?
Yeah, I guess only Risk of Rain would be the only one that comes to mind as well. It was much more sort of slow and methodical. I do love that game, but yeah, it's mostly the distinguishing feature here is just the high intensity of dodging and moving around, high mobility, and just all of those tools that you're activating, like pulling on your different weapons and your different consumables and your weapon attacks. And I will say that the actual items that you're finding aren't the most exciting or inspiring. They're all like 1 second less cooldown on your alt fire, plus 10% to your health, and fairly boring in that sense. I do like in these roguelikes that I like them to be able to change the way that you're approaching the game broadly. Obviously the weapons are already doing that to a sense, but I would have liked those to be a little more interesting. Where they do get more interesting is the parasites. because this Celine has like no sense of self-preservation. She finds an alien parasite, shoves it straight on her arm to see what happens, and these will basically all have an upside and a downside. They might say, "Oh, the currency stays on the ground for twice as long, but now your melee weapon does 50% damage," and that will change the way you play the game. And you might like make a build essentially around getting all of the low melee upgrades, so you just ignore that part of the game entirely. There are others, like there's this mutation system where some of the sort of caches of weapons and currency around the map will have a chance to give you a mutation. And that will say, oh, you can't use your melee attack at all now, or you enemies will drop acid on the ground when they die, but all of those will have a little mini objective associated with them, like kill 50 enemies or open 3 chests or so. And like looking through tips for this game, everyone's like, it's not worth it. Don't get the mutations, don't get the parasites, just like any downside is bad, ignore that. And like, to be honest, like those are what make the game interesting, is like taking those downsides and having those little mini objectives, and it's just a way of keeping it more interesting and changing how I approach the game from run to run. In that sense, I do like to gamble a little bit, I guess. It's just a little push your luck system that you can mess with on the side.
Very nice. So it sounds like the distinguishing factor is like the kind of the higher pace of the action.
Yes, yeah, and I will say like so in addition to that, you've got the story, which I don't have much to say about. It is largely sort of operating on this weird esoteric dream logic metaphor that doesn't really make much sense. You'll run into these aliens that have like some kind of corruption going on. It's not really explained in any meaningful way. I mostly let that glaze over me. There is an interesting sense of like in the first biome you come across your family home is just here on this planet, and you can go into it, and it turns into this little mini first person like survival horror game. Well, not really horror, but like very atmospheric walking simulator essentially. And so those are these really atmospheric moments, and this game does have a great sense of atmosphere and just vibes. The story, I said, didn't really gel with much at all, but just in terms of creating a sense of place and tone, I thought it was really strong there as well.
Yeah, I don't really expect much story out of my roguelites that I play.
Yeah, and then like I said, it is very strange how quickly she just like finds this ancient sarcophagus that looks like a sort of an Iron Maiden torture device, and she just climbs straight in. So it's very hard to gel with what the logic behind her motivation here is. She's just like going on touching everything, putting her hands into weird holes, and it's very strange.
Just trying to channel Samus Aran, I guess.
Yes, yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah, I said I could easily complain about this game a lot. Lots of little mini issues I have with various systems, but overall, that combat just keeps me coming back. I have become very disillusioned with roguelikes in general, but yeah, the core loop here was really compelling, and it does have an off ramp. There is like a clear ending in which you can stop playing, which is always another good thing for me too.
Very nice. All right. I have a game to cover, and it's going to be very different than yours. First of all, it's not a video game. I guess I covered a tabletop game recently, but it was a digital one, so that was kind of a cheat. All right, so the game I'm covering today is a game system, and it's a TTRPG system. And first, I'm going to put out a caveat is that I haven't played this game. Mm-hmm. I am giving I guess you could call it a preview, based off a read of all 3 core books of this game system. And this is, without further ado, is called Nimble. Nimble, mm-hmm. What is it? What are their tagline? A fast, tactical TTRPG. And this is a system that I backed on BackerKit, and I got my copies maybe a couple of months ago, but I just got around to reading them recently. And the core set that I backed has 3 books, and they're all I don't know if you can tell from the video, but they're all like lovely hardcover. They're digest size, basically digest size, maybe a little bit wider than that. And they range between 50 and 100 pages each, but page count Doesn't really bother me. Actually, the shorter the better, in a lot of ways. But these are not, these are not pamphlet-sized RPGs. They actually have a decent amount of crunch in them and a lot of detail in them. And I wanted to give kind of my impressions from having read through them.
Yeah, I'd seen some early buzz around this on Blue Skies and thereabout. And then my main takeaway was I saw the tagline tactical RPG, and I was
Right.
curious how it leans into that.
Yeah, it does lean into it. But first, I should say that this is a crowdfunded book, so obviously there's a kind of delay factor between when you back an item and when it gets fulfilled. And thankfully, this project did get fulfilled. But when I backed it was essentially during the open gaming license debacle
Uh,
that D&D went through maybe a year or two ago, where basically they pissed off a lot of people because they said no more derivative products of D&D or else we're going to charge for them. And a lot of people got very upset about that. They were even saying that like podcasts, like actual plays and things that were based on D&D would have to give a cut,
paid
for
licensing
instance.
fees. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of people got upset about that. There was a lot of fan backlash. And I think, I'm not going to belabor that historical fact, but a positive thing came out about it is that a lot of people got fed up and decided that they would create replacements or I don't know, like life rafts if people wanted to get out of the D&D Hasbro Wizards of the Coast ecosystem, but still wanted to play fantasy RPGs. And I don't know, people that have been long-term listeners of this podcast probably know that I'm not a big fan of trad fantasy. It's maybe like the genre that like least interests me in RPGs, but lots of people I know really like them. There are still cool adventures out there with crypts and dungeons and castles and creatures that I would like to play. I just don't want to play with the kind of old, crusty versions of these games that are basically owned and milked by these massive toy corporations. It's nothing anything I want to support. I don't have a personal history in it, so I don't feel a emotional attachment to it like a lot of people do. I just want to get to the core of it, and this system promises to do that. It's essentially a drop-in replacement for D&D. There are a few pages in the book that tell you how to kind of convert elements from D&D 5th edition into Nimble, but it doesn't require you to have D&D knowledge coming in. It actually gives you everything you need to, even if this is your very first fantasy RPG. So
Yeah,
that
ironic that having its origin in an alternative to D&D, it's also just marketing itself as being D&D compatible, which obviously is very much a marketing tool as they trying to capture that audience. But it does also just feel like all the board game publishers saying this game has a solo mode and a cooperative mode and like trying to hit all audiences simultaneously.
Yeah, it's essentially, when you have an industry that's dominated by one big player, you kind of have to attach yourself to the belly of the beast somehow. And also, you have audiences like those, basically people that I mentioned that do have a history with D&D, do have an emotional attachment with D&D, do have strong memories of campaigns long past or friendships that they've had or maintained over a long time. I'm not saying that you have to ditch those things. Obviously, I can't tell someone that they should ditch those things. What they can ditch is Hasbro, right? What they can ditch is corporate overlords.
And it
You can
provides a tunnel to transition from
Yeah.
one game system to another.
Yeah, you can still have fantasy, you can still have high adventure, you can still have minis, and you can still have tactical grids. That's not a problem. Nimble lets you do that. So, I've been talking about generalities a lot. I want to talk about some specifics. The core book of this 3-book set is actually the thinnest one. It's about like 52 pages or something like that. And what I really like about this book, there's lots of things I like about it. Like I said, they're hardcover. They're quite attractive. The art is really nice. They come with built-in bookmarks, which is like definitely bonus points in my book. And the printed material like starts right in the I don't know if you can tell, but the inside of the hardcover itself. On the front, in the back, they have some reference material built right into there. The artwork, like I said, is great, colorful. It's all human rendered artwork, and it's quite lush. It feels very modern, very much like modern Wizards of the Coast, but wouldn't be out of place there. It feels very fresh, but also doesn't feel like too too pasteurized fantasy artwork there. It has a bit of personality to it,
And if we're
which I
talking
like
like
as well.
this as a reading experience, like how is the readability of the book? I've struggled with a few, like Scum and Villainy. I seem to recall struggling with the formatting and layout there.
This is a very readable book. I'm getting to be an older person there, and the typeface is not too small because, like I said, it's digest size. Like, there's not
Mm.
too much going on there. I would say that this is probably like 80% of the size of Scum and Villainy, but like the writing is just a lot more clearly laid out. The layouts, everything that they highlight, the examples that they provide, the use of colorization and highlights and where they've dropped in the artwork, like it's just very, very attractive and readable. So they score high marks in that regard in terms of layout. So no problem there. That's the reason why I was able to kind of get through all, 200 pages or so of this material in a weekend flat. I usually don't go through RPG books that quickly, but it was easy and really quite pleasant to go through them. So, like I said, the core rules just make sense. It's all in this 50 page overview, and this is a great book you can hand around the table. If anyone is curious about just kind of getting into the system, like let the players get their hands on it too. Probably the players will mostly want to be holding this book, the second book, which is about heroes. This is essentially pretty much like no rules per se. This is just essentially a description of the character classes, of which there are 11, and 11 character classes, and let's just say two main subclasses each. So you get kind of like branching variations. And the artwork, once again, is really nice. Unfortunately, it seems mostly dominated by basically like kind of European style looking people. Not
Hmm.
a lot of people of color to be seen, except for maybe like could this person be a person of color? It's hard to say just because of the
Hmm. Hmm.
the the lighting or whatever. And then lots of like fantastical creatures too, of
Funny how
course.
fantasy has trouble imagining people who aren't white.
Exactly. That said, this system and the world building in it, which is fairly minimal, but they have kind of divorced themselves a little bit from that kind of European influence. Like, not everything is just like a concept of something that existed in medieval Europe. So like some of the terminology, or there isn't any like kind of gross Orientalism like what we discussed the other episode about things like the monk character, for
So it's
instance.
not trying to emulate real world analogs.
No,
Okay.
the paladin is not called a paladin, for
Mm.
instance. They have the berserker, the cheat instead of the rogue, the commander, the hunter, the mage. Instead of the paladin, you have the oath sworn, and instead of the
Okay.
druid, you have the shepherd. So every culture has these sorts of concepts, right? They keep
Hmm.
it fairly generic. What they have for the monk, which is usually like this kind of like kung fu movie, 1970s Chinese kung fu movie depiction of a Shaolin monk, essentially, right? They've kind of divorced that, and um, it's called the Zephyr in this one. Here you have a kind of kung fu pose, but with this kind of draconic creature here. And for the most part, kind of they've divorced it from most specific Earth cultures and made it more fantastical. So that part that I like. The world building is very, very minimal. There is like a world map. There are like places. There's a sample campaign. It goes from level 1 to 4 essentially, and if you're unaware, most D&D books will take you from level 1 to 20, and then by the time you're level 20, you're kind of like godlike. So
Yeah.
there's no point in going past level 20. This book will essentially let you play all the way up to level 20, although the included adventure in the Game Master's Guide, which is the third book, only goes up to about level 4. But at that point, like, you should be comfortable enough with the game system that you can maybe, create your own fantasy world, or even like leverage a pre-existing D&D campaign and adapt it to this rule set. I think it's really quite possible to adapt. That's the kind of at the core of this system, is that the core rules are so simplistic and logical that like even a novice GM shouldn't take too long to get comfortable with the core rules, and you should be able to even like start expanding upon them on your own. Make house rules, introduce new rules for a specific setting or a specific campaign, introduce concepts from other game systems that you like or other campaigns that you've played before. I think it would definitely be possible to do that with this.
Does it give you many tools for generating adventures, or like any good tips on how to go about it yourself?
Basically, all these three books, which is all I own, they do suggest that they're going to be coming with new books in the future. Some of them are going to be talking about, like, they're going to come out with like a monsters guide, obviously. But basically, everything in this book, every section of it, will give you tools for kind of expanding upon what's in there. So if it's going over these spells, it'll say, well, let's give a breakdown of how you could create your own spells. Or in the section that covers monsters, it'll give you kind of guidelines for creating your own monsters, or likewise ways for you to create your own equipment, weapons, armor, or magical items as well. So it's giving you obviously these are very brief books, right? They're not supposed to be encyclopedic. It's not saying you're a dummy, you have no imagination. Let's give it all in this encyclopedic tome for you so you don't have to think once. What it's saying is, you're a smart guy. You probably have lots of ideas of your own. How about you feel free to add those to our world, and here are the tools that you can use to do them.
I mean, I'm playing another trad fantasy game at the moment that's very much sort of OSR based, so lots of like random tables and like randomization tools for generating new content, and then you can use that as a seed of sort of add stuff on top. Whereas this is very much you need to create your own from scratch in that sense, right?
There is, like I said, there is like a whole mini campaign in this, so you don't have to create really anything. It has kind of like the basic set of monsters that you would encounter in a lot of trad settings, and it includes about a dozen or so unique creatures that are very flavorful. They have custom art and they have very kind of like deep descriptions. So it's not as though they don't give you anything. I feel like they give you just enough to get you started. And I think they expect that most people coming to this system will probably already be familiar with D&D or other fantasy RPG systems. For instance, I'm looking at this as a great way to maybe adapt some RPG settings that I have loved in the past, like Earth Dawn. I could see myself running a campaign of Earth Dawn in Nimble because I love the world, I love the setting, I love the concepts of Earth Dawn, but I don't love the rules. So I'm really looking towards this as a platform to build that
Well,
on.
there's plenty of other third-party D&D adventures that you can get without supporting Hasbro.
Yeah, absolutely. And other cool parts about this system is that the character sheets are very small. They're not really as small as, like, say, some OSR that I've played where you can do, like, 4 up on a single letter-sized sheet of paper, but you can easily fit 3 or at least 2 characters on a single sheet. You could definitely fit it on, like, an index card. The stats, there's only 4 attributes. There's only, like, 10 skills. The numbers behind them make sense. There aren't any derived stats, or the attributes aren't derived anyways. They're just the bonuses. Imagine that. Just the numbers that matter. You don't have to have these arcane rules that are just leftovers from previous editions of historical D&D. They've cut away all of that. In combat, you have 3 actions instead of 2 in a turn. Just kind of logical things. You can attack multiple times, but each time you attack above 1, you gain disadvantage. Just key differences like that. One rule that I love about this, and I think the MCDM system, Draw Steel, does a similar thing, if I'm not mistaken. But there's no roll to hit, or the roll to hit and the roll to damage are the same roll. In a way, that's the case with Cypher too, but it's a little bit different. In this, when you attack with a weapon or a spell, you just roll the damage dice. You hit and you deal the damage that you rolled, imagine that, unless you roll a 1. If you roll a 1, then the attack fails. But who wants to do 1 damage anyway? Like, there's so many times when you play, an hour and a half, a 2-hour long single combat encounter in D&D, and you wait so long for your turn to come around. It's a comedy of
errors of people falling over themselves.
You wait so long for your turn to come around, and you just miss 5 times in a row. So there's an hour gone. In this, you will hit. You will hit off and on again, and the result of it will vary. It'll go up and down based on what you roll, but you won't be doing whiffs so many times.
So how tactical does this feel? I know like D&D's roots were largely like a tactical war game almost, and obviously it's tried to get away from that, but those roots are still very much embedded in the game, as much as you try to avoid them.
Yeah, this game, I think it is tactical. Like it's right in the subtitle, but I think part of that might be a little bit of marketing as well. Like in the Game Master's Guide, they have like a whole chapter on how to track, how to count grid squares, for instance. And, talk to a board game player, they would love to talk to you about counting grids and adjacency and diagonals, for instance.
Line of sight.
Exactly. They love to break down how that works out, how you shouldn't be able to have move the same number of squares diagonally or not. This game actually lets you do either or. So it has conceived of those limitations, but it's fairly flexible. They'll even do something like, say, it's definitely assuming that everyone's going to be playing with square grids of inch square grid spaces and miniatures, and most people that play D&D do that anyway. I think a fairly small percentage of players play Theater of the Mind. But even if you did want to play Theater of the Mind or without gridded squares, they give rules about just kind of freehanding it. Literally, they suggest measuring with your thumb and your pinky finger. Of course, that's going to slightly advantage people with bigger hands, but they say, just kind of adjust if you have bigger hands or smaller hands. So they're willing to be adaptable for people and meet people where they are. So I think this will be a uniquely good system for maybe even first-time GMs, or certainly for first-time RPG players. Like I said, the core rules is so short, it's like not intimidating. You could easily pass this around the table, and most people, even just for reading the bolden text, will be able to interpret and digest what exactly is going on.
It's always good when you can sort of silo off how much rules load you can give to each player. Like some might just want the hero book and nothing else. Just tell me who my character is, and we'll learn the rules from there. Others can just learn that core book, and others might want to know the full tools that the GM is bringing to force.
Right. A couple more details about the rules that I like. I said that basically characters have 3 essentially action points that they can utilize during their turn. They actually don't have to use those on their turn, they can reserve some action points. And this is kind of like this is a little bit like a board game or a CCG even, is you can retain some of those action points and use them as reactions on another, even an enemy turn. So, for instance, they have these things called heroic reactions.
It's like Overwatch and XCOM, I guess.
Well, a lot of games do have a reaction ability, but usually that's sort of a canned thing. Either you delay your action in D&D and say, I'm just going to take my action later after a certain trigger happens. And if that trigger doesn't happen, then basically you've given up your turn. Or a specific thing, I'm going to do Overwatch, I'm going to look through this door, and if anything comes through it, I'm going to shoot. Or something like this. This lets you reserve action points from during your turn and let you use them to defend, which means I'm going to actively defend. That means I can take the value of my armor off of the full value of my armor off of the attack damage that's dealt to me. So it's not just a passive thing. I can interpose myself. I can move myself in between an attacker and an ally if I'm close to that ally. So I can say, no, you don't. I can defend the glass cannon magic caster in the party, for instance. I can make an attack of opportunity myself by using an action point. And by the way, monsters can't make attacks of opportunity, so you don't have to track that during combat either. Or I can otherwise help another player, giving them advantage by spending one of my action points on their later turn, if I can think of some smart in-story reason for that to happen. So what this does is not just a mechanical difference, it's a story difference. This is encouraging the players to use their heads to help create a sense of teamwork and to tell a more engaging story, even during combat.
That's the tricky thing with tactical games, is the most optimal way of fighting a monster might not be the most exciting way.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, whenever you play a fighter, just bash him over the head. Or the berserker literally says you have to attack every turn, or else you lose this advantage. Or, certain spellcasters in D&D, like there's only one spell that really matters, or cantrip that really matters. So they're just going to blast it
Fireball,
every single time. Yeah, exactly. So many kind of illogical, old, crusty rules they've gotten rid of, and they added new ones that encourage you to be more dynamic. Basically, you don't have to sweat the little stuff. There's a certain classification of monsters that are different from just kind of standard monsters. For instance, you can have goblins, for instance, any kind of type of monster, kobolds, say, but you can call them flunkies. And flunkies are just like regular versions of that monster, except they can't crit. So making a critical attack, because you don't roll d20s to determine whether you hit or not. You determine it based on whether you hit the max value of your die. So say you have a d6 to hit. If you hit a 1 on a d6, you fail. Any other value, you hit the value, except if you hit the maximum value, you get to roll that die again. So it explodes, and you get to roll it again and again and again. Obviously, that would be very harsh if you had a little kobold hitting you with a d4, and they just happened to hit a 4 a quarter of the time. So flunkies can't crit, and that's fair. So you just basically can ignore them. And there's even a weaker classification of enemy. You can have, what are they called? Minions. So minions all move as one. They just kind of like swarm. And they only have 1 hit point each. So if they get hit with any damage, they're dead.
Wow.
Which is just hilarious, right? They're just to gunk up the works. So I just love that. It just seems so thematic. This game has no XP. You don't have an XP. The GM just tells you when you get to level up.
When it feels thematic.
Yeah, it has no alignments. That's old D&D BS that my modern parties don't play with anyways. Sadly, the only thing that they've kept from old D&D pretty much unchanged is the money system. It's a terrible money system where 10 coppers equal 1 silver and 10 silvers equals 1 gold. It's just this terrible non-metric system.
If you need to bring out your advocates, I think it's you've gone too far.
Yeah, you don't want to go that thematic in working with ancient figures. Anyways, This game, Nimble is the name, and Nimble is the core concept. Flexible is another good, suitable subtitle. That said, I sound very effusive about this. I haven't played it, so all I can say is I'm excited to play it, and I hope maybe you will join me in a session of it if we can get some people together to do it. Like I said, I got this. I paid for it myself. I got the backer kit of it at a very fair price. I got it at a steal, to be quite honest. I think I paid something like $40 for all 3 books, hardcover, and I got the PDFs. If you buy it now, you can get the set of 3 PDFs for $50, or the set of 3 hardcover books for $85. Hopefully, the tariffs don't make it too
Canada, that's
costly.
a question mark.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Anywhere outside of the U.S., anyways, it's a challenge. Basically, I'm excited about this, comparing it, seeing how this compares to more kind of like, I think, logical, easy to run systems like Cypher. I'm really curious about MCDM's Draw Steel as well. I have also fulfilled the digital campaign of Son of Oak's Legends in the Mist,
Right.
which
yes.
is the City of Mist fantasy version. So I'm really excited about reading through that as well, because that's one of my favorite systems. Anyways, this is fun stuff. So there may be more after we've had a chance to try this out.
Awesome. Yeah, I'd love to check that out sometime.
Great.
Cool.
All
We're
right.
running a little long, so why don't we jump into a quick dessert where we talk about some non-gaming things we've been enjoying. So, speaking of touching black goo, something that I've been enjoying is the new TV show Alien Earth. So, I recently had been talking about Noah Hawley in regards to Fargo, which I've been rewatching and is one of my favorite shows of all time. This is his latest show, obviously playing in the Alien universe. And it's only 3 episodes have come out so far. Mark, you haven't watched this at all, right?
No, I haven't gotten around to it. I'm so far behind in TV, but I know it's just waiting there.
Yeah, I've obviously it's easy to be cynical about the aliens and the treatment of that world. Alien Romulus, I was pretty mixed on, and I don't have a lot of thoughts on Prometheus and Covenant, but I do like Noah Hawley is very good at using derivative homages as a launching pad into something new, which he did in Fargo, obviously. And so that seems to be the case here so far. It starts out with basically, this spaceship that looks like it was shot for shot the original Alien film, but then broadens out from there, obviously, with a lot of it set on Earth itself, which is something we've not seen in that universe. And it's playing with a lot of the themes from Prometheus, in that it's all about AI and the different versions of AI in this world. There's 3 different versions. I think it is the androids, which is like your classic Ash and Bishop. You've got cyborgs, who are basically humans who have been modified in some way, a little bit like Terminator. One of them looks like a little bit like he can bring a knife out of his hand, like Terminator style. And then you've got hybrids, who are basically people's consciousness who have been like uploaded into android bodies. Which, I mean, obviously that theme has been done a lot. It is reminiscent of one of my favorite book series called Otherland, which played with that, and it does play with a lot of very compelling themes of like consciousness and existentialism. Obviously, it is stranger that all of the hybrids in this show basically are children. And it does lead to some very on the nose thematic touches, like they're all named after the Lost Boys from Peter Pan. It does have this really compelling nature in how all of these kids are now in adult bodies, who are superhuman, like super strength, super agility, but they're still children. And it's fascinating to watch these adult actors play as if they're children, and just the fidgetedness and the way they're constantly rolling around and very uncomfortable in these bodies. That was quite fun to watch, and it is an extremely diverse cast, so I'm enjoying that. It is very good acting. The alien itself, I'm not completely sold on yet. It's a little strange in that, like, the first episode is like this really slow ramp up. The second episode, it basically feels like an Overwatch character where it's like it'll enter a room with a dozen people, use an ultimate, and kill them all in like 2 seconds. And then suddenly it finds the protagonist, and oh, my ult's on cooldown. I'll let you live for now. And its lethality is like wildly like fluctuating at any given point, I think. So I'm hoping they still play with that a little more, but so far it's not really about the alien, it's about those other existential questions. So enjoying it so far. It is a little bit like, because so many of the characters are various versions of AI and creepy billionaires. Like, everyone is being very ambiguously creepy. There's not much to. It's very hard to get a read on many of the characters so far. So I'd like to have a little more to sort of someone to root for, to be honest. But I'm enjoying it so far. I'll see where the ride goes.
We're all getting a little bit creepy as we head into this dark future of ours. That's cool. I enjoyed watching Alien Romulus. I was reminded of your description of the android, the newer android character in Romulus. Has
Andy,
a very
yeah,
he has a very kind of childlike
that was one of the best
personality,
parts of that movie,
doesn't he?
for sure.
Yeah, a great actor, great performance in that one. And overall, I thought a pretty enjoyable film. So yeah, Alien is a series I enjoy, so I'll definitely get around to watching this.
And it's led me to immediately reinstalling and replaying Alien Isolation. So I'm hoping to talk about that on a future episode.
I still haven't gotten around to it, but you know what's coming is Halloween. So I should play that for the Halloween season. Spooky times. Okay, I talked at length for my last main topic, so I'm going to be really quick about this one. This time I'm talking about a manga. I'm talking about this series called Steel of the Celestial Shadows. Very terrible name, but very good manga. As you can see, I'm on volume 4 already. And this manga is essentially about Edo period Japan. It's about, it's a fascinating story about fortune tellers and exorcists. Like, the premise is that there's like a kind of a guild of basically these kind of outcasts, fortune tellers, exorcists. What are the other ones? Comedians, ironically. Comedians are part of this guild as well. But this essentially all these outcasts of kind of creepy gifted people belong to this guild, and some are good and some are bad. And this samurai, the main character, is really interesting. This is all info from the first few pages. He is destitute, but he's samurai. And samurai is not a job in historical Japan. It's a caste. So you are a samurai whether you're a good fighter or not, but you still have all the rights and privileges of it. You have you're like landed nobility. You can kill anyone that you want to. There's no kind of police that can and no force that can control you except for the shogun that you work for and the emperor that you also work for. Basically they are all powerful, except this protagonist is a samurai, except he cannot touch steel. Basically he has this kind of like Magneto style power where anytime he gets close to metal he warps it. So he can't hold a sword, he can't even get a haircut. He can't even pick up coins. Like, he just kind of warps them. There's a scene where he's like paying for food and he has these like gnarled up coins. So basically he's destitute. His wife has been like kidnapped or something like that. And basically everything's going wrong for this guy until he meets this woman who somehow wanted to marry him. He begrudgingly does marry her, and he begrudgingly falls in love with her, and then she is kidnapped. Yeah, the second wife is kidnapped, and then he gets caught in this world of powered people. So really fascinating. It's much more kind of a grown-up story than, say, another feudal Japan story like Naruto or something like that. This isn't really like shonen stuff, but it's not just purely violent either. Ninja Scroll or something like that. It's just kind of like more mature in general. Like this is about history, and the storytelling is a little bit darker. And there's a lot of mystery in the story as well. Characters are mysterious. They don't spell everything out. The funny thing about a lot of shonen manga is like they try and tell you the rules of the world. They try and beat the rules of the world over your head. Like, oh, here's the explanation chapter about how the school tournament is going to run down, and here are the rules about all the four headmaster Hokage of the village, or something like that. They're all about very, very concretized world building. This one, it's all very kind of fluid and mysterious, and the stories are kind of told in these kind of really poetic chapters. The artwork is fantastic. The art kind of goes in between like very kind of sketchy artwork for the most part, very like animated, lively characters, but you get these like lush, painterly interstitial works, and all the covers are also this kind of like lush, kind of oil painted style. So I imagine it's the same artist. Maybe it's different, but all the character designs are interesting. All the scenarios are interesting. The real world research that they've done is interesting. Just good stuff. So I'm going to keep reading this series, and it's by Viz Media in North America, and it is called Steel of the Celestial Shadows.
Interesting. Is there an anime for that yet?
I don't believe there is. It's not one that obviously looks like an anime. There's no like, ninja graduation arc or anything like that.
Doesn't feel very cinematic.
It is cinematic, but in like, it doesn't follow the tropes of shonen, so I don't think it's likely to get picked up that way or anytime soon. Maybe it will get picked up by like a more kind of artsy studio. Who knows? Maybe it'll be turned into a film.
Cool. Okay, I think we'll leave it there and wrap this episode. So, thank you, Mark, for the 3-course meal. And if you have any questions or comments for us, any suggestions you might like us to cover, you can contact us at omnigamersclub@gmail.com or at our website, omnigamers.club.
Right, and if you haven't checked out our YouTube channel yet, go watch our videos there. We post videos of all the episodes that we are putting out, and go check out our podcast if you want to hear some old episodes from our early days. Our first multiple dozens of episodes are only in audio form, so go check them out there on a podcatcher of your choosing. And we'd love to hear your feedback, like Daniel says. You can follow me on Bluesky at markyuasa at .bsky.social, MARKYUASA. And Daniel, want to share your socials info?
Yeah, you can find me also at Bluesky at Board Game Feast, and you can find our Omnigamers Club account there as well. And any shares or word of mouth is always appreciated. So we continue to be ad-free, sponsor-free, Patreon-free, just trying to put the good word out there. And it, unfortunately, is not free to produce. So any way you can help us out is always appreciated.
Right, rating 5 stars on YouTube or podcast would go a long way to spreading our reach.
Yeah, so I'm excited to get back into the routine, and I've got some exciting games lined up for the next few weeks, and some potential guests too, so stay tuned.
Very cool. All right, so everyone out there, until next time, have a balanced diet of gaming.
Thanks, bye.
Bye.